Welcome to Advocacy Training, Understanding the Bill Process and Analyzing Legislation. I'm your host, Marie Sullivan. In this video, you will learn about the process a bill takes from introduction to being signed into law. You'll also learn how to analyze the contents of a bill, including what the main elements are, how to find changes to existing law, and how the legislative website and bill page can be your best friend. The first thing you need to know about the bill process is that it's designed to stop or slow down the enactment of new laws. That's right, only about 10% of bills that are introduced actually make it across the finish line. Here's a graphic of the various stages a bill must advance through to eventually become law. Step 1 is a bill is introduced by a legislator. Only legislators can submit a bill for introduction. Representatives introduce House bills, and senators introduce Senate bills. A companion bill starts out as the same exact bill in both chambers, but depending on what happens, it could be different in the end. Bills may be introduced at the request of an executive branch leader, like the governor, or a state agency, board, or commission, but the sponsor is always a legislator. Step 2 is the bill is assigned to a policy committee, or if it's strictly a budget issue, it will get assigned to a fiscal committee. Once a bill has been assigned to a committee, step 3 is getting the bill scheduled for a public hearing. Just because a bill is introduced doesn't mean it will be heard. This is totally up to the committee chair. Because of limited time, many bills are never scheduled for a public hearing. After a bill has a public hearing, it may or may not get scheduled for a vote, or what the legislature calls executive action. Again, it's up to the chair and usually members of the majority party whether a bill will continue to advance. In executive action, a bill might be amended based on comments received during the public hearing, interests of the committee chair or members, or the bill sponsor. A bill that strikes all the underlying language of a bill and replaces it with new bill language is called a striking amendment. Usually this is reserved when many changes are proposed to the original bill. A vote is then called for and tallied publicly. A majority of the committee members is needed to advance the bill to the next step. Once a bill leaves its first committee, if it costs the state money to implement, it will go to a fiscal committee for further discussion. In the House, bills that affect the operating budget are sent to the Appropriations Committee. Bills that affect the capital budget are sent to the Capital Budget Committee, and bills that affect the transportation budget are sent to Transportation. In the Senate, both operating and capital bills are sent to the Ways and Means Committee, and transportation bills are sent to Senate Transportation. Then the process is the same: public hearing, possible amendments, vote. All bills that pass out of policy and/or fiscal committees are sent to the Rules Committee. This is step 4 in the process. The Rules Committee is the gatekeeper to what comes to the floor for a possible vote of the House or Senate. It's archaic, but rules serves as a major filter to bills advancing. Often bills will remain in rules while competing stakeholders work on new language. The Rules Committee can't change bill language, but it can hold a bill until there's agreement to move it forward. Step 5 is action on the floor by either the full House or full Senate. This is a friendly reminder that even if a bill makes it to the floor, it's no guarantee that it will be voted on by that body. Bills can be amended on the floor with a majority vote in favor of that change. A simple majority is required for most bills. Revenue bills, like the state bond bill, require a 2/3 majority vote in favor. Once a bill passes one chamber, it starts the process anew. Policy Committee, Fiscal Committee, Rules Committee, floor action, just in a much faster fashion. Along the way, the bill can be amended again by the opposite chamber. After a bill passes both chambers, if it had no changes, it's on its way to the governor's desk. But there's still work to be done if it was amended in the opposite chamber. Let's take a House bill. It was changed by a Senate committee. Before it can be sent to the governor, it needs to return to the House where it started to see if the House agrees with the changes the Senate made. Step 7 is a process of reconciliation with three possible outcomes: concurrence, agreement with the changes, and it's off to the governor's desk. Dispute, nope, we disagree with the changes you made and ask you to recede. Or conference, we really need to pull everyone together to see if we can agree on a new version of the bill. Bills can actually go back and forth between chambers when they are in dispute. Sometimes differences can't be reconciled and the bill is lost. Usually conference committees are used for budget reconciliation or complex bills when there's a desire to work out differences. When a bill goes into conference, the committee includes 2 majority Senate and 2 majority House members, and 1 member each from the minority party, for a total of 6. When the bill emerges from a conference committee, the only vote members on the floor can take is a yes or no vote. No more changes are allowed to the bill at that point. The final step in this process is delivery to the governor's desk. When bills are delivered prior to 5 business days at the end of session, the governor must act on the bill. When bills are delivered in the last 5 days of session, the governor has 20 days after the final day of session, excluding Sundays, to act on a bill. A bill can go into law without the governor's signature, and the governor may only veto full sections of law in a bill or may veto a line item in budget bills. Throughout this entire process, there are deadlines by which bills must pass. For example, policy bills must pass out of committee by a certain date, followed by another date for fiscal committees and action by the full chamber with a 5 p.m. cutoff. There are many barriers to a bill becoming law. Now let's see how that process looks for a bill using the legislative website and bill history page. You'll see the bill number at the top, the bill sponsors, when it was introduced, and which committee received the bill. Then you'll see the process. When the bill says first substitute, do pass, that's your clue that the bill was changed in the committee. The same will apply to a second substitute. Note that the bill also was amended on the floor. Once the bill passes one chamber, it's sent to the other chamber for consideration. Note the various steps, including the Rules Committee. Then it returns to the House for consideration of Senate amendments. The Speaker and the President of the Senate sign the bill, and it's delivered to the Governor. The Governor signs the bill. Most bills are effective 90 days after the end of regular session, unless otherwise noted. The history of the bill page includes all the versions of the bill and nonpartisan committee staff reports summarizing the bill and the various changes, as well as testimony and who testified pro, con, or with concerns. It also will include a link to any available fiscal notes that have been developed by the affected state agency or agencies. And finally, it will include a list of floor or committee amendments that will show up along with their disposition. You'll see here were they adopted, not adopted, or withdrawn. I think you'll agree that's a lot of process to keep track of. So a final note, the legislature makes it very easy to track when a bill is changing and advancing. Use the Get Email notification if you want to know what's happening with a specific bill. Feeling like getting more engaged? Click on the Comment on this bill. Your comments will be sent automatically to your legislators. Note that the comment is not sent to the committee, but the legislators that represent you, so they will know what you think. If you want a committee to know your comments, you can email the committee members or use the Submit Written Testimony within 24 hours of a public hearing. Now that you understand the process for a bill, let's talk about the elements of a bill and analyzing legislation. All bills have a few things in common: a bill number, telling you if it's a House or Senate bill, a sponsor or list of sponsors, a bill title, which gives you a little bit of insight into what the bill is about. It also includes the sections of law to be amended and other information. It includes an enacting clause, telling us whether it's being enacted by the legislature or it's a referendum to the people. Bills can also have intent sections, definition sections, new sections, and other sections that include budget appropriations, repeal of existing sections of law, effective dates, and other directions to the code reviser. So let's show all of that on a bill. Here you'll see the bill number and that it's a House bill. You'll see the prime sponsor, which is the first name listed, and the co-sponsors. The bill shows what date it was introduced and which committees it started its journey in. The bill title is An Act Relating to Creating a Workforce Education Investment to Train Washington Students for Washington Jobs. There's a long list of sections of law that will be amended, along with new sections of law. Sections to be repealed, which are eliminated, and a section with an appropriation. You'll also see a section with an effective date. Most bills are shorter than this one. I like showing this bill because it shows nearly all the elements of a bill. Not all bills will have an intent section, but an intent section can be useful in describing why the legislature is enacting the law. Sometimes it will have findings or will it be explicit in what the legislature intends to do. Unless it is codified into law, it doesn't have the full weight of law. That said, intent sections can help state agencies interpret what was intended when a question arises, and they often are used by the courts when there's a question or dispute. Not all bills will have definition sections, but like intent sections, definition sections can be helpful in a long bill so that keywords only have to be explained in one part of the bill. Now, this is skipping ahead a minute, but whenever you see language like this that is strikeout, that's a signal that the language is being proposed to be deleted from existing law. Underlined language, like that seen here, defining financial need, is proposed new law. Usually there will be a clue in the section that a specific aspect of law is being changed. Here you'll see that the RCW is listed and the words are each amended is your clue for new or revised language. Remember, strikeout means deleted and underlined means new language. Anything that isn't underlined or in strikeout is existing law. So while it's important to know what it says, it isn't being proposed for a change. For example, you'll see that in all of this subsection, the subsection A, little I, and little ii have strikeouts, so are proposed to be removed from law, while subsection B stays the same, so no proposed change, and subsection C would propose removing the words "an imminent" from the law. The exception to this is any section that starts with new section. That's the signal that all of the language that follows is new law. When you see a section and don't see any strikeouts or underlined text, look back to the beginning of the section. It may be new law being proposed. Now, I mentioned that bills might also have appropriations or budget directives. As you'll see here, subsection 2 appropriates more than $2.5 million in a certain fiscal year and $4 million in another fiscal year from a specific account to the University of Washington. Not all bills will have appropriations. Some will just have a null and void clause, which means the bill won't go into effect unless it is funded in the appropriation budget. The end of a bill, particularly a longer bill like this one, may have a lot of directions to the code reviser and anyone following the bill. For example, this bill includes a severability clause, which means that if one part of the bill isn't upheld in the courts, the other sections of law will stand. It also directs new chapters of law under specific titles. One of the sections takes effect January 1, 2020, which means all the other sections take effect 90 days after the end of the session in which the bill was passed. You won't see this often, but one of the sections is actually contingent on another bill passing, as described here. Finally, this includes many chapters and sections of law that are being repealed in their entirety. In other words, instead of creating a section in the bill and striking out all of the bill language, repealing them in this section is an easier way to handle. However, it does mean you need to read what is being repealed to make sure you agree with that proposal. So there you have it, reading and analyzing a bill. Still have questions? Join me for an interactive session on Tuesday, January 11th. Registration is required and it can be found under the Events and Programs tab and looking at the January calendar for the 11th. Thank you for listening, and remember, there's no wrong way to PTA.